Welcome to this GERAD seminar where I will be presenting the modeling of a hydrogen economy in energy economy environment, or E3 models, as well as integrated assessment models. And actually, I will start by integrated assessment models. So starting by a literature review on integrated assessment models. Then I will cover the world model with a model we are developing, the merge model, and then the regional or city level with the so-called ETEM model. Okay, so first the world level, but before that, the literature review. So actually, this is part of or taken from this study, which is the first paper of Sarah. The first PhD paper of Sarah, the role of hydrogen integrated assessment models, a review of recent developments already available as a credit to GERAD, so GERAD internal report. So we are interested in looking at the entire hydrogen value chain from production from different sources, logistic and distribution, and then utilization in different sources. And as you have seen, Sarah, I'm using the revised figure for the revised paper, right? So, integrated assessment models. Integrated assessment models, first let's talk about integrated assessment. The idea is to do an interdisciplinary approach, combining different fields of knowledge. So, in this context, that would be economy, climatology, engineering, all this type of knowledge. And then integrated assessment models are simply tools for conducting an integrated assessment. So in this, again, this paper, which is already available, we have reviewed 12 different models from 50 different studies papers, right? So you have the list here, and the merge model, which is mentioned here, is actually the Swiss version called merge ETM. So we explain that from the original model developed at Stanford, there have been different versions. We have one of the versions here at GERAD, and this is basically the Swiss version merge ETM. All right. So let me, before we go into the results of this survey of integrated assessment models, let me give you a brief overview of integrated assessment models, what they are doing. So the idea is here to provide an interface between, on the one hand, the climate science, and on the other hand, the policy. So here you would have the policy would be represented in particular by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And you have all the conference of parties, international agreements, and so on. And on the other hand, you have a body of scientists called the IPCC, which writes reports frequently. The latest one is Assessment Report 6 in 2023. And among others, they use integrated assessment model or integrated assessment model. So with these models, what you can do is to provide trajectories of future trajectories of greenhouse gas emissions, in particular within the so-called SSPs or shared socioeconomic pathways. So these shared socioeconomic pathways, you have 5 main categories. They have a common, within a given scenario, you have a set of assumptions, population growth, economic growth, type of international relations, technological progress, and so on and so forth. So these are, they have designed a consistent set of assumptions which create these different socioeconomic pathways. So again, 5 main families from sustainability to fossil fuel development. And later on, when I will be presenting the merge model, we have calibrated ourselves on this so-called middle of the road or SSP2. What I could also mention is that based on the trajectory you consider, you will reach a given temperature increase by 2100, which depends on the climate sensitivity. So people also like to talk about the radiative forcing. So here, if we are in a world SSP2, we would expect a forcing of 7 watts per square meter by 2100. Whereas if you are stick with SSP5, you will be at 8.5 watts per square meter as additional forcing in 2100 compared to pre-industrial level. So that's what the IPCC tells us. And of course, you can study climate policies, energy policies with this model. So you can, for instance, impose targets on temperature, targets on greenhouse gas emissions. And you see, based on the type of developments you are in principle, you can have then a reduction of the warming. And for instance, if you are in SSP2, you can go down by 2100 to 1.9 watt per square meter as additional warming. Whereas if you studied with an SSP5 dynamics, then you cannot go below 2.6 according to the IPCC. Right? So you are kind of stuck already with a trajectory which implies by 2100 a certain warming. And of course, and this is what I like to do in my research, is to look at the interplay of climate strategies. So of course, you have mitigation. So the idea is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You have also adaptation. You can adapt to climate change and to reduce the impacts. And you could even have geoengineering. Okay, so what does an integrated assessment look like? Well, you have a series of mathematical relations to describe different aspects. So you have the economy, the energy system. I remind you that CO2, according to the IPCC, is one of the main drivers of climate change. So especially fossil fuel-based CO2, carbon dioxide emissions. So this is very important. Climate, obviously, you need to have a series of relations to make the connections between the emissions and the impact on the climate. Eventually, you have a land system as well. So it's not all integrated system model. They have this modeling of forest and all the land surface. We don't have it, for instance, in Merge, but some of them do have that. Inputs, potential GDP growth, population dynamics. Of course, you can include all sorts of policies, like the existing policies, new policies targeting greenhouse gas emissions, and all other assumptions which actually could be very important, like technological progress in the energy system. So here, if you have like potential GDP, you will have like realized GDP. You have, based on the configuration of the energy system, production and consumption, you have greenhouse gas emissions, and as well energy pathways. If you have an energy system, you have land use. We could also mention here the climate evolution, right? So actually, this is from Carbon Grid, right? We noticed we have done that. Okay, so now let's jump into this first paper I'm presenting about this literature review. And first off, before presenting any results on the potential of hydrogen across different scenarios and according to different models, let's look at the 12 models we have considered, and let's look at how we can characterize them. And here we have a series of elements: economic approach, mathematical structure, modeling spectrum, model perspective, and climate modeling, but more actually the type of how the models are constructed with different modules. And let's start by this one, the economic approach. So you have here GE, general equilibrium, PE, partial equilibrium. What is that? So general equilibrium are models which consider the whole economy. Usually they have the whole economy in different sectors. I don't know, agriculture, industry, services, and so on. Different sectors. Why? So in general, because it's the whole economy, but also equilibrium, general equilibrium, because when they solve the model, they get that at a given period, all markets are in equilibrium. Supply is balanced with demand. Okay. And an example here is this model, GEM-E3, which is a model used by the European Commission. Contrast that with the partial equilibrium. So economists would say we focus on a single market like energy, but actually you have, I would say, more a sector, because in energy, maybe you have electricity, a market, you have maybe the oil, gas, and so on, coal markets. So it's better say like a sector, right? Typically the energy sector. So if you look at only one sector, then you can go into much more detail. But the rest is, you can have approximation or you can just somehow ignore it. Okay, and an example here is TIAM, which stands for Times Integrated Assessment Model. So actually in the Times approach, you do capture some economic feedback because you have a price elasticity. When the price is increasing, the energy demand is reduced. So you do capture some feedback from the rest of the economy, but not with as detailed as a general equilibrium. Okay, so first important distinction, the type of modeling you do for the economy and the type of equilibrium you compute. Next, mathematical structure, and I'll put together also the modeling spectrum. So we have, like, for instance, RD, recursive dynamics, we have IO, interval optimization, and for the modeling spectrum, we can be myopic or having some type of foresight. So, recursive dynamics. So the idea here is that, of course, we are in a multi-period context, right? We start in 2025 or 2020, and we project at least up to 2100. By step of 5, 10 years, depends on the model. Recursive dynamics, so the models are solved period by period. So you find, let's say, an economic equilibrium for a given period, and then you only pass some information to the next period, like the accumulation of capital. And then you solve again for the next period, okay? So you solve sequentially, and if you just pass an information, so when you optimize the given period, you don't see the future, it's myopic, okay? Contrast that with intertemporal optimization. So intertemporal, you see usually you see the entire horizon, so the perfect foresight, or you see a few time periods, 3, 4, 5. Right? A good example again here is this times approach. We do cost minimization over the whole time horizon. Okay. Another very important distinction among models is how they view the energy system. Can be a top-down, a bottom-up, or hybrid. Okay, let's start by top-down. Top-down, the idea is to follow a macroeconomic approach. So you have macro or aggregate economic variable, capital, labor, and so on. Again, the same example from GEM-E3. And here, what we have done is we have displayed a typical production function in a sector. So here you have, again, we are reviewing models that account for hydrogen. Here we have the production of hydrogen. In a purely economic perspective, because, okay, to produce a good, I need some inputs. I need services, I need, I don't know what, all type of non-energy inputs, and I have the traditional labor, capital, and energy. Okay. And between the two, I have an elasticity of substitution, which means that if the price of these intermediate inputs increases, then I may use a bit more of this aggregate. And then I can disaggregate as I want. So here, for instance, I have on the one hand energy, and on the other hand, the value added, capital and labor. And then I continue disaggregating, and each time I have an elasticity of substitution. And the level of disaggregation depends on the model, but the approach is the same, right? So you have a production function. And also another important aspect is that everything is in monetary value. So it's not the tons of hydrogen I'm producing, it's the value of hydrogen in dollar units. Right? Now we will contrast that with bottom-up, techno-economic approach, and disaggregate model. So let's jump into the so-called reference energy system. Here we have a representation again of the value chain of hydrogen, different ways to produce. We can use, for instance, I don't know, electrochemical pathways. Here we have an electrolyzer. Here we have, again, different types of production technology. Every technology is characterized by techno-economic parameters, how much it costs, the investment cost, operation cost, maintenance cost, and so on, and as well as input-output relationship with efficiency, right? Then we can have explicit technologies or explicit, let's call it technologies for the distribution and conversion. So, for instance, we can model the pipeline, how much it costs, and so on. And then we have the usage in different sectors. So, for instance, for transportation, we will model explicitly, I don't know, a truck using hydrogen. How much it costs, what's its efficiencies, how much it can travel, and so on, how much it consumes per kilometer, and so on. So every box here is a technology represented explicitly, and then the arrows are loads of energy, different forms. Okay, so it's like a network, right? Somehow. And obviously here you have energy units, right? We have petajoule, kilowatt hour, tons of hydrogen, and so on, ton of coal, energy units. And then you have so-called hybrid. So here the idea is that we mix kind of everything in the sense that we have a bottom-up and a top-down approach. And the example is the merge that I will see again later on. So we have a bottom-up model for representing the energy sector with explicit technologies. And we have a top-down model or module representing the rest of the economy outside the energy sector using labor, using capital, using energy. So using a production function. Hybrid, bottom-up and top-down. Okay. Last aspect is how the models are constructed. So here we mentioned climate, but it's also true for different modules. So I can contrast IAMs like merge, which contains modules which are idling and are not designed to be run separately. So you run the whole model, and inside you have climate module, energy module, macroeconomic module, and so on. Okay. You can have also IAMs composed of linked models. The example is message globium. So message is a kind of energy model, globium is a terrestrial model, and they have partly these two called message globium. So it's a bit like the one above, different modules, except that you can really separate and run message on one hand and globium on the other. They are meant also to be run separately. Or you can do soft linking, and again, an example with message magic. So magic is a general circulation model, so climate model of intermediate complexity. It doesn't take weeks or months to run. It's a few hours. And it's a soft link, so they're just exchanging some information between the two. Right? Okay. And we can go on like time horizon, time steps. I was mentioning that. How many, because typically these are world models, how many regions they are considering. Actually, the level of technology, so technological detail, and also technological change. So do they have an exogenous assumptions concerning technological progress? Or do they have an endogenous representation of technological progress, which may depend, for instance, on the investment, R&D investment, or the amount of technology you install? The more you install, the more you learn, the less it costs, right? So this would be an endogenous representation, and actually these play an important role in the results I'm going to show. So far, so good? All right. So this is like purely descriptive. In the 50 reviewed articles, counting the number of articles which look at a specific aspect of the value chain. So on the production side, the main, if you want, technologies considered are the pathways are electrochemical and thermochemical. A little bit also biochemical, but mostly again electrochemical and thermochemical. On the usage side, actually, but first, not so much on distribution side. On the usage side, it's mostly transportation and industry. Also, we have also usage in building, power sector, agriculture, but most articles look at transportation and industry on the usage side. Okay. Also, we have counted the number of technologies which are considered in these IAMs. And so this is the size of the circle is proportional to the number of technologies. And I would like you to contrast, for instance, the which has a few technologies in the different sectors, I mean, the different sites of production, distribution, and so on, with, for instance, Remind, which has dozens of technologies. And this will play an important role. Okay, so now so since this paper, they don't have necessarily the same type of scenarios they are studying to be able to compare. Actually, what we did also is we look at the IPCC result from the IASA database. And here, let me first remind you, if you haven't read this Assessment 6 report, that IPCC characterize different scenarios based on temperature reached by 2100. So, for instance, C1 are scenarios where the limit is, so the warming is limited to 1.5 with, let's say, a 50% or more than 50% probability. Okay, and so on. So the higher the number, the higher the temperature you have by 2100. Okay, C1 to C8. Okay. And I would also like you to look at this one, C3, because when I will present their own results, I will refer to that. C3, limit warming to 2 degrees Celsius with a probability chance of limiting warming to more than 67%. Okay. So these are all C categories going from C1 to C8. So here we have the median in solid and then the interquartile range for all scenarios. And what we can see here is that if you want the stringier the greenhouse gas reduction, so the less the increase, the more the hydrogen. Right? So indeed, when you want to limit temperature increase by 2100, it seems that hydrogen has a potential, and the more so with the more severe you impose the reduction of the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And here, let's look at 250 for the C3, that's the green. So it's a bit more than 20, a bit less than 30. Don't see very well. But okay, let's give you the idea that the C3 by 250 is 25, 30, something like that. Okay. So keep that in mind. Okay, and now these are those looking at different model results, again from the IASA IPCC database. Again, the interquartile range and the outer points which are outside the distribution or the interquartile range, let us say. And so again here, contrast a model like which has not such a high penetration of hydrogen with, let's say, Remind, which is the one which has considered stronger penetration. Again, which nominated technologies and Remind has a lot more. And actually, if we look at different C scenarios like C2, C3, the results do not change. Right? The one with which the model which have limited number of technologies are at the bottom. The one which are more technologies are here. Okay. And this is now a representation of production and consumption. So that would be the total production against interquartile range, and that would be the median. And so you see that in terms of production, the pathways, it's mostly electricity, the first one, and then it's fossil fuel, which should account as well for CCS, Sarah, right? It's fossil fuel, including CCS. And then on the demand side, that's the total, which is actually less because some papers only report on production, so we don't have all information. And actually, the biggest sector is other sector, because there are many studies that don't report which sector is consumed. So that's what we have other. But then we have transportation and industry as the two main explicit categories of it. Okay. And we have also performed an ANOVA, analysis of variance. And looking at this, the p-value, technological detail, and also some important technological change are the main parameters explaining the result. All right. So that's my first part. Looking at the world level with a series of models used by the IPCC, okay, and a review of these models. Now I'm jumping to the model we have at GERAD, which is based on the MERGE platform. So a little bit of history. The MERGE model was originally developed at Stanford University by Professor Bahn, and later on by his student Mans and Richel. And when I was in Switzerland, I was involved in developing this model, MERGE ETL, which we have surveyed in the previous paper. And in particular, I did in MERGE the modeling of endogenous technological progress using different formulations, a series of papers. And then I used these to study, I think I have, no, but maybe I'll show it later. I study, for instance, what need to be done to avoid a tipping point in the climate system, the thermal and circulation. I think I have the paper displayed in just a moment. Okay, so I've basically already explained that you have, it's an hybrid approach. You have a macroeconomic model, you have an energy model, you have greenhouse gas emissions taken into account by a climate model to compute temperature change. And we have also a damage model. So we have a damage cost, which impacts the possibility to grow in the future, right? And you can do two things. You can do cost effectiveness. So you can pose limits on greenhouse gas emissions, limits on temperature, and you see what's the best way to achieve these limits. Or you can do cost benefit. So on the one hand, it's costly to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but on the other hand, you save on damages. And then you do a cost benefit approach. So the original model, 9 regions, and since it was developed in Stanford for the Californian, Canada was put with Australia and New Zealand. So this already explained, already shown. So again, the ETA, it's a bottom-up model with actually you had at that time both specific technologies, such as, oh, this is an hydrogen, or you have a generic technology, it's an advanced carbon-free technology. It could be advanced nuclear, it could be, I don't know, solar, something was not distinguished at that time. But still, you can see the substitution between renewable or fossil fuel to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Macro, bottom up. So you have also a constant elasticity of substitution production function with here capital, labor, value added, and an aggregate electrical and electric energy. Well, as traditional, then economic output is used to compute, invest, pay for energy costs, damages, and you have also some trades in the model. Okay. Climate, lots of nonlinearities here. You go from emissions, so you have three greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. You go from emissions to concentration, to radiative forcing, to temperature change. And then you also you take into account the time it takes for the ocean to warm. So you have the long-term equilibrium temperature and you have the actual temperature. Okay, that's the paper I was mentioning. So this is the paper where we have been looking at the Atlantic thermoline circulation. If you have read the news recently, they were talking about the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, which is actually part of the thermoline circulation. That's the AMOC is in the North Atlantic, but actually the THA, the thermoline circulation, it's a global circulation over the whole Earth. So we have looked at the temperature limits, what would need to impose to be in the unsafe zone for the thermal circulation, and look at what would be the impact on the energy systems and the economy. So it's an old, so I would say oldie but goodie. I still encourage you to look at this paper. So recent development at Merge. So we went back to this version, the Merge, for simplicity. Because this is introducing non-convexity, actually. It's on the genuine spot. So we say, okay, let's go back to a convex setting. It's easier. But we add adaptation, so reactive and proactive adaptation. So that's a recent view of the model. So again, we have this nested CS production function. Here you have value added. Here you have electric and electric. So this actually gives the demand which must be satisfied. And so you compute the configuration of the energy system to meet the energy demand. Then again, you have the emissions, the climate, temperature, and here the damage. So we distinguish between gross market damage and net damage after adaptation. Okay. And yeah, adaptation impacts the production possibilities. So sorry, the damage impacts the production possibilities. And that's the study I'm referring to. So I won't have time to present it, and it's not talking about hydrogen. So we have two types of adaptation. Reactive, it means that you react to the damage which are coming. For instance, you have a storm, you're in the coastal zone, you have a storm coming, you put sandbags, that's reactive. Or you say, okay, every once in a while, I have some big storm, and then I build the sea lights. And it's a capital. So proactive. So it's very interesting study. I encourage you to have a look at it. Published in 2019 in the Energy Journal. Okay. So now let's look at the current work, which is actually the PhD of Camilla. So he has done a lot of work from the AdMerge, we say now 1.0, moving to a 2.0. Not sure it's 2.0 or 2.01 or whatever. Let's say 2.0 for simplification. An update of the base year from 2000 to 2015. Moving from 9 to 15 regions. So finally, we do have Canada as an explicit stand-alone region. And we have, on the one hand, some explicit regions that you have, for instance, Canada, US, Mexico, Brazil. So on the BRICS side, you have Russia, China, India, Brazil as explicit countries. And then you have blocks, Western Europe, Africa, and so on. Series of blocks and explicit regions, explicit countries. So I don't know if she's online. You don't see her. One of my PhD students is struggling to do this. So actually, maybe it was not a good idea to have the North region because it's so small from an economic point of view. I thought it was a good idea because I expect that the impacts and adaptation possibilities will be quite different in Arctic region from the remaining regions in Canada, but we are struggling because North regions from an economic and energy standpoint is really, really small. Anyway, normally we should have at least East and West. We should be able to do that. Okay, so improve energy system representation. Again, Camilla did a lot here. Yeah, that's the latest one, right? The latest we did yesterday, right? Okay, so on the electricity side, only explicit technologies. So before you had like advanced, high cost, low cost. Now we have like explicit solar, we have explicit wind, we have also storage facilities. And we did a lot of work within the H2CLIP. So it's a international project on hydrogen modeling. So that's why we have a series of hydrogen, explicit hydrogen images here, right? Yeah, so then you have electricity, you have non-electric energy, which are used to satisfy the energy demand. Introducing explicit wind and solar is not trivial because you have intermittent energy and you have to account for that. So Camilla has introduced explicit wind classes and solar classes as well as dynamic wind costing. So this is the source of information for wind and solar in Canada. Yes. Coming either for Environment Canada or for this National Research Council. Also, the introduction of residual load duration curve. So if you have a system, so that's a classical load duration curve, right? So you have peak demand and base demand, and that's over 1 year. So if you have like, so this is for illustration purpose, like if you have like 10% of intermittent, this is your the residual curve. If you have go for, let's say, from 10 to 50%, you will have some time in the year where the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, but the demand is not there. So you will be losing this production. You have to do something. Either you lose it or you do something with it. You can store it. Okay. And also you have a reduction of the peak with the introduction of the intermittent. So we have both to take into account the reduction of the peak and the curtailment. So this is done in the model now. And also we need to introduce flexibility constraints because obviously you cannot satisfy the peak demand with wind and solar. So you need to have flexible system and constraint to say that, okay, you need to have this type of technologies available in the system. All right. This is still in progress, has been in progress for at least a good year now. Regulation of damage and adaptation. So it's actually not trivial. So because we have to look at all the damage categories to find and then to calibrate the adaptation. So it's still not done. So I won't be able to show any results taking adaptation into account, so sadly. And also Camilla spent actually quite a lot of work and a lot of time to calibrate precisely the model on the latest scenarios from the IPCC, so SSP2 and version 3, because in database they have different versions even for SSP2. So that's version 3, which was released like a few months ago, or when was that, November? 10 months. Oh, 10 months. Time is passing so fast. Earlier than that. Okay, 10 months. Okay, so this is the results of the calibration. So here we have like the baseline of 1.0, and this is the new baseline, which follow quite precisely the SSP2. And by 2100, actually, it's a warming or a forcing of 7.0. That's what we say, SSP2-7.0. And here we have the regional calibrations for primary energy and electricity generation. So you have the kind of interquartile of this box plot. You have the box plot, and the diamond is the merged result. So you're mostly within the interquartile range, which is pretty good. Okay, so now some scenarios. Baseline. Baseline calibrated to SSP2. It's important to notice that it's counterfactual in the sense that we do not account damages. So they're not included. So we can compute that ex post if you want, but they do not impact economic development. Then we have what we call the reference. It's actually calibrated on the so-called steps for stated policies of the International Energy Agency. So International Energy Agency, it's in Body, actually it's in Paris, right? And they produce lots of reports, energy reports like energy balances, perspectives, and so on. So they have studied these stated policies. So they've looked at all the countries, the policies they have put in place. Include that in their model and see what's the trajectory of the policies in place. Okay. Again, so sorry, here damages are considered, but again, damage adaptation is not ready, so we don't have it. And then I also saw something called APS, or announced pledges. It amounts to going to a net zero. So they have looked at Canada has pledged to reach net zero by 2050, Europe by 2050. So they have looked at all the pledges, and they have a trajectory for that. So here are the results. So that's the IEA steps in this dash light blue. And we are slightly above because we are reacting to a carbon tax. So we are taking the carbon tax as proposed by this IEA. And so basically the model is reacting slightly less to the carbon tax. So we are slightly above. Whereas for this IEA APS, so this is a constraint. So we have period by period the level reported by the IEA. We put that as a constraint, and of course we follow that exactly. Okay. Here we have energy-related CO2 emissions in gigaton C per year. Pay attention in the IPCC, for instance, they report gigaton CO2, so it's not the same unit. And here we have the total CO2 emissions. Okay, so again, for the NZE, net zero by 2100, and it's around 2 degrees to increase. Whereas the reference of the announced policies, we go above 2.5. We clearly overshoot the 2 degrees. Okay. And actually, it's in terms of level reach, it's close to this SSP2-4.5 watt per square meter the forcing. Okay. So with that, we can look at all the results, all the energy results per region. So just as an illustration, we can look at primary energy. These are world results. We can look at final energy used by carriers. We can use electricity generation, and we can look at hydrogen. So this is a presentation about hydrogen. So obviously, the stronger the reduction, the more the hydrogen you will have in your system. That's worldwide. And 250, we are about 30 exajoules per year. And this was about the number we have seen in the C3 categories of the IPCC. So we are calibrated on SSP2. We are not calibrating on hydrogen because that's our own modeling, but it's interesting to see that for the hydrogen results, we end up around the median of the IPCC for C3. And all the SSP, I guess. It's only SSP2. Is it an SSP2? No, for this C1 to C3. No, it's for all. For all SSP. So that's interesting. Okay. For all SSPs, C3, we end up about the same. All right. So that's 2/3 of my presentation. So we have been looking at the world level, looking at IPCC results and literature review. Hydrogen in our own model, again, a world model at Merge. And now I'm turning to actually Sarah's PhD, which is looking at the city of Montreal, the Greater Montreal regions, using the so-called ETEM model. So ETEM stands for Energy Technology Environment Model. It's a bottom-up model designed by Frédéric Babonneau and Alain Horry. You have the picture of Alain here, the founder of GERAD. Right? Open source, that's why we're using it. And you will see lots of detail for the energy sector. So actually, the first version of ETEM, Montreal, we could call it, we don't do it internally, we could call it ETEM 1.0, was developed by, within the PhD of Sajad, Ali Paris-Sani, a former PhD student. And you would recognize the name of Alain was also called earlier. And Frédéric as well, of course. Okay, so that's it. Being a bottom-up model, we cover both production and demand with explicit technologies. If we look at a bit the detail, 130 technologies, explicit technologies. On the demand side, 90 explicit technologies, 51 energy commodities, so energy sources, if you want, type of energy. Useful demand, 13 types. That's also interesting. We project until 2050 only. And the time slices, this is something we don't have in merge. In merge, it's one period, which kind of an average over 5 years, over 10 years, and so on. Here, we have like periods of 5 years, but in every period, we distinguish 96 time slices. So we have 4 seasons, and for each season, we have a representative day, and for each day, we look at 24 hours. Okay. So lots of detail. If you look at electric models, like some of our partners in the H2Clip, they have detailed electricity model. They have like minutes. They consider minutes for, right, to look at the production and transport and so on. So we are happy with 96, but you can go deeper than that. Oh, being at GERAD, I have to present a few questions, and also for my lecture. So. So the main variable level of commodity, the capacity install, import, export. We have also the transmission between regions. I won't go in much detail, actually. I don't have that time, but much time. But so the idea is to minimize the total production cost. Of course, it's discounted over the different factors. So what is the discount factor? And you have typical constraints like energy balance. The total production in your system must cover the demand. You have the accumulation of capacity and also the fact that the production is limited by the capacity. Very obvious, right? You have the input-output relation, right, which takes into account the efficiency of the technology. So all this type of usual constraints you have in this model, which is it's a linear model, right? It's a linear. How many variables do we have in there? 2 million variables. And it takes how long to, which means I didn't already, but
for now it was 1 hour.
An hour.
For the scenarios. For the baseline, it was 10 minutes.
Okay, so from 10 minutes to an hour, and it's the LP with 2 million variables. Not so bad, 10 minutes up to an hour. Okay, so now that's the work of Sarah. You're introducing hydrogen in the model. So you have the value chain, different production pathways, and different demand categories like transportation. You will have different explicit technologies, transportation technologies using hydrogen, like fuel cell car, fuel cell bus, and so on. And that's probably another representation, a bit better, I would say. So you have here the explicit technologies that have been considered for Montreal. Is that the latest one, Sarah? I did not update it. No, it's not the latest. No. Okay. I should.
You have also boil.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So for the next presentation in 2 weeks, I have to change it, right? So some explicit technologies, distribution and delivery. And then on the consumption side, it's mostly transportation and industry, right? Mostly. We have also cook and cooking. Scenarios. So this is our baseline. And this is our the main scenario we consider. It has changed, right? It's 80% now. But again, I have to update that. But as you know, the city of Montreal has pledged to be carbon neutral by 2050. And we still had a discussion this morning. For the moment, we cannot go below 80% reduction by the model. So we must be lacking some descriptions of technologies that are directly a capture of these fancy technologies to be carbon neutral. At the moment, we cannot go beyond 70 or 80%. So these results are maybe a few months behind, a few weeks behind. Result for 70%. But here as well, we see the hydrogen penetration in the industrial sector. So here you have this, it's petajoule of energy, and a little bit in the transport sector, right? And I guess the next slide is showing the explicit technologies which are mobilized. So it's basically imports and I guess steam methane reforming with CCS in terms of production. Distribution is what truck and is it pipeline? Yeah, pipeline, trucks and pipeline. And in the demand side, it's transportation. We have long haul trucks, short haul trucks, and train, and also green chemistry in the industry. And heating and cooking must be very small. Still there, but very small. Okay, let's just assume that 82/83. So we have a bit time for questions. So again, I was presenting results of Sarah and Kanya mostly, but have also Doajan, which is doing a PhD, starting a PhD, but actually on times. It's another model with SMIA. And Frédéric, who is not here, and Reza, which have also contributed to such a system. Ah, yeah, because she's not online. That's why. Ah, no, she is. Yeah, she is. She appeared. Okay, it was like, and Micah also. Yeah, she's the one struggling with the Canada disaggregation. All right, thank you.